Imagine walking out of your office on a perfectly ordinary Thursday morning. The sun is out, the city of London is buzzing. You're carrying a briefcase. You've done this exact walk 1,000 times. You turn down a quiet alleyway, and you stop. In that briefcase is £292 million. Let that number breathe for a second. 292 million. And in about 30 seconds, it is all going to be gone. This is the 1990 City Bonds robbery. It's the largest street robbery in recorded human history. It was bigger than the Great Train Robbery, bigger than the Brinks-Mat gold heist. In fact, it's bigger than almost anything ever stolen from a single person in a single moment, anywhere on Earth. And yet, you've probably never even heard of it. Because this wasn't done with balaclavas and shotguns. It was done with a suit, a small knife, and a criminal web that stretched from the back streets of Luton to the New York Mafia, all the way to Pablo Escobar's private zoo in Colombia. This is how they did it. How they almost got away clean. And how the system let nearly every single one of them walk free. To understand the heist, you have to understand that in 1990, the City of London was basically operating on the honour system. This was before digital banking. Every day, roughly £30 billion moved through the square mile. Not as data, but as physical paper certificates carried by guys in suits. They were called bearer bonds. No name, no account number, no paper trail. If you held the paper, you owned the money. They were better than cash. You could trade them in Zurich or Singapore, no questions asked. At £1 million per certificate, a briefcase full of these was the world's most valuable handbag. The banks thought nobody would be foolish enough to steal them, because they were too hard to clean. Well, somebody disagreed. May 2nd, 1990, 9:38 a.m. John Goddard, a 58-year-old messenger, is walking through Nicholas Lane. It's a narrow, quiet artery in the heart of the old city. A man steps out. He flashes a knife. Goddard, who, by the way, was never even told the value of what he was carrying, just hands it over. The attacker jogs away into the crowd and vanishes. The police thought it was a random mugging. They figured the thief would realize the bonds were useless and bin them. What they didn't know was that the robbery had been planned for months. The man with the knife? Patrick Thomas. A man recruited specifically because he had zero ties to the mob. And within 60 minutes, those bonds were in the hands of the ultimate fixer, Keith Cheeseman. Keith Cheeseman was a businessman from Luton who viewed prison as a networking opportunity. By 1990, he was the guy you called to move hot goods. But when Cheeseman sat down to count the loot, he got a shock. The news said 292 million. But in front of him, there was 427 million pounds. Where did that extra 135 million come from? The Bank of England has never explained it. Suddenly, the bonds are everywhere. 77 million pops up at Heathrow with the IRA. More turns up in Cyprus, Singapore, and West Germany. And then, it gets weird. September 1990, Miami. Customs officers find £71 million in bonds, hidden inside 2 telephone directories. The destination? Lima, Peru. They were headed to Pablo Escobar. Apparently, the king of cocaine was using British Treasury bills as collateral to buy exotic animals for his zoo. You literally cannot make this up. But the greed caught up to them. Cheeseman sent $10 million to an associate in Texas named Mark Osborne. Osborne walks into a bar on 42nd Street in Manhattan to sell the bonds to a mobster named Tony DiPino. Except, Tony wasn't a mobster. He was an FBI agent. Osborne was arrested, flipped immediately, and started wearing a wire. He gave up everyone. 16 days later, Mark Osborne was found in the boot of a car in Houston. 2 bullets to the back of the head, execution style. Cheeseman fled to Tenerife, but the FBI eventually tracked him down. He served 4 years in a US federal prison. When Cheeseman was released, he retired to a villa in Turkey with a pool and a wine cellar. Now, here is the part that should make your blood boil. Over 80 people were arrested for this heist. 80. Including the masterminds caught red-handed with millions. And yet, every single one walked free. Except Keith Cheeseman and John Trainer, who was arrested for a mortgage fraud using the stolen bonds as collateral. He was sentenced to 7 years for handling stolen goods. This robbery triggered a fundamental change in how Britain's financial system worked. The bearer bond system, those physical certificates passed hand to hand through the streets of London, was quietly phased out over the following decade, replaced by electronic records that couldn't be stolen at knife point. In that sense, at least, the system was fixed. But the money? The networks? The men who planned and profited from the largest financial theft in British history? Still out there. Still unaccounted for. Statutes of limitations expired. Evidence gone cold. And Keith Cheeseman, now in his 60s, has written a book about it. He calls it How to Rob the Bank of England. Researching these cases and making the videos takes hours. Your likes, comments and follows are the caffeine that keeps me going. It is completely free for you and means the world to me. Please hit the follow button and help me grow.